Hello, and on behalf of Transforming Education, I'd like to welcome you to our third mini module connected to our SEL for Educators Toolkit. This is a way that we can walk you through some of the content in a quick, accessible format, and then you can go check out the whole toolkit and dig in a bit deeper. My name is Lindsey. I'm a lead partner at Transform Ed, and I'm excited to dig into this content with you all. So if you haven't checked out the first mini module yet, I encourage you to click out of this and go check that out. That gives an overview of the what, the why, and the how of SEL for educators, which really sets up the practices that we're talking about in the subsequent mini modules. So today, the high leverage practice we're going to dig into is explore emotions. So again, these are the 5 high leverage practices that we have pulled from a synthesis of research showing which areas really directly benefit the educator, the students, the colleagues, the families in the school environment. When educators focus on these 5 areas, we see benefits for themselves as well as other community members. So when we consider exploring emotions, we know that oftentimes this is something we focus on with students, with the young people we're working on. Emotional awareness involves the way we recognize, make sense of our own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. And although we often talk about this with students for their own benefit, it's also critical for educators as well. Educators who explore their own emotions report that they're more effective in classroom management and have stronger relationships with students. We know that having those strong relationships is key to having a safe, supportive, and successful classroom environment. And so really focusing on our own emotions, exploring those and digging in a bit, supports not only our own practice, but the experience of students as well. So we have broken down this high leverage practice into 3 sub-strategies: labeling emotions, recognizing physical reactions, and responding rather than reacting. So it's really critical that in addition to all the content we teach, all the instructional practices we try to embody and incorporate into our practice, that we really think about this exploration of emotions as a key part of our practice as well. So this first piece, label emotions. Increasing one's emotional vocabulary enables one to more accurately identify and articulate feelings, ensuring that emotional responses are both productive and intentional. The phrase "name it to tame it" has become really popular, often attributed to Dan Siegel, the neuroscientist. And this talks about in naming an emotion, the brain actually releases neurotransmitters which can calm our neurological stress response. This subsequently creates a distance between ourself and our experience. And that distance, that space, allows us to really consider how best to respond. So again, the simple act of labeling an emotion, naming what emotion we are feeling, can create that distance, calm our stress response, and allow us to respond more productively. So again, we often work on this with the young people that we're interacting with, encouraging them to use words, be specific in naming their emotions, and that practice is just as key for the adults. Next, we'll talk about recognizing physical responses. So we often experience emotions directly in the body. Emotions trigger physical responses such as muscle tension, sweaty palms, elevated heart rate. And all of these things are key pieces of information. Noticing these physical responses can help us to identify stressors, identify what's triggering us in an environment. When we understand the effects of emotions, we can respond more intentionally merely than react. So again, this theme of being more in tune with how and why we're feeling the way we are so that we can be intentional in our responses. By having specific understandings of where and how we feel emotions in the body, we can become more aware and more in touch, creating more intentional responses. And these all connect to this idea of respond rather than react. We know there are so many things happening in any teaching and learning environment, constant minor stressors and major stressors. And so sometimes we react, and reactions occur instinctively without deliberate thought or full consideration of impact. Responses, however, are intentional and deliberate, with an awareness of what we are doing, why we're doing it, and how it will impact others. We often talk with students about being clear on what choices they're making, why they're making those choices, and how their choice impacts those others around them. This practice is just as critical for us as adults to be modeling this for our students. And so oftentimes we hear, especially now in the world of education, about the practice of mindfulness. And mindfulness is a practice that trains one's mind to respond rather than react. Again, it's a practice, and it requires intentionally paying attention to one's thoughts, emotions, physical sensations in the present moment, and key, without judgment. Educators who engage in mindfulness show reduced stress and burnout, have greater confidence in their role, cultivate more emotionally supportive relationships, and have better classroom organization. And so again, by training our mind to pay attention to our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations, we can be more intentional in the way that we respond rather than react when interacting with students, staff, families. Again, I want to highlight the key piece of when we're paying attention, it's without judgment. So we're not beating ourselves up for how we're feeling. We're just noticing, checking in with that, and then trying to respond intentionally. Again, it's a practice. So considering these three sub-strategies that I just outlined, let's take a moment to pause and process. How do you see your emotions enhancing or inhibiting your work with students, staff, and families? Take a moment to jot down some ideas, think through it in your mind. How do you see your emotions enhancing or inhibiting your work as an educator? And of these three strategies that we discussed, labeling emotions, recognizing physical responses, and responding rather than reacting, which do you feel you've done the most work on already? Which do you feel pretty confident in? Is it naming and articulating your emotions, recognizing where you feel them in the body, or giving that space to respond rather than react? Which do you feel most confident about? And conversely, which of these three strategies outlined do you feel you need to focus a bit more on? That you think you could take some time and energy to really try to dig into that practice a bit and see how it impacts you as an educator? So again, under this larger high leverage practice of exploring emotions, we want to think about how we break that down into tangible, concrete strategies. And those are the three that we've outlined here. For more information about the other high leverage practices, as well as some of the background to all of this, please check out the full toolkit using this link here. In the toolkit, you will find a professional learning presentation, which these slides have been pulled from, a companion guide, which presents great interactive components that are outlined further in that professional learning presentation. For the companion guide related to explore emotions, we have some specific mindfulness practices in there. There's some reflections activities about thinking where we feel emotions in our body, as well as some exercises to practice being specific in labeling and articulating feelings. The snapshot is also included in the toolkit, which is a quick, simple, accessible handout that summarizes the high leverage practices and their corresponding strategies. And then lastly, we have a very comprehensive list of resources in our reference list. If you'd like more information or have questions, feel free to reach out to us. And also you can stay up to date with all we're doing at Transforming Education by subscribing to our newsletter, following us on social media. Our next mini module will be coming out soon. We look forward to sharing that with you. In the meantime, definitely check out our website, explore all of our resources, in addition to taking some time to explore your own emotions. For now, that's it. Be well.